Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast with Pastor James C. Johnson, a ministry of NorthStone Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida.
Hey, I am super excited about today's Strength for Life podcast. I welcome all of you here. Our guests today include my son, Andrew Johnson, and historian extraordinaire, Cooper Statt. Make them feel welcome, would you please? We're going Yes. Andrew is a student at Pensacola Christian College, and you have actually had Professor Statt.
What a privilege.
Yes. So, Andrew, would you introduce us to Cooper a little bit? And then, Cooper, I'd like you to say a few things about yourself as well.
Historian extraordinaire is a fantastic way to summarize Mr. Senor Statt. I think that Mr. Statt, you need to know that he's a Bills fan, unfortunately.
Like football, we're talking
yes,
Buffalo Bills?
Yeah,
Okay.
Big Buffalo Bills fan. He's got this big cup, right?
That's true,
that he carries around.
Are you a Jim Kelly fan?
I did, yes.
Okay, me too. From back in the day, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Statt is...
Throwback reference.
That is, yeah.
I mean this. I really do mean this. I think that Mr. Statt is the most beloved teacher at PCC. Like, well-known, beloved. Everybody likes Mr. Statt. So having him on the podcast, huge privilege. And he's taught at PCC for... good while. How many years?
It's been 6.5.
6.5.
Terrific,
years.
yeah.
So, teaches history and a couple other things, right? Or is it just history?
Just mostly history, yeah.
Okay.
I think you talk too much and people at school talk too much because I know Mr. Ward I know you guys mentioned him on the last podcast. He is very well liked. He is very well respected.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand the hype until I met him. And then I met him and I was like, he is very, very genuine. And I know you guys talked about him a lot in the last podcast. He's very genuine.
You guys can arm wrestle for who the favorite the favorite is.
He would probably win, most likely.
Cooper, tell us a little bit about yourself as well, if you would.
Okay, I grew up in New York, kind of in the country, like middle of nowhere, and came down here to Florida. And I don't know if you guys had kind of the same experience. I know people complain about the humidity up north, but you come down here and it is nothing like it is, up north. Yeah. And I remember I came down here and I was miserable the first year. Did not like it. Didn't want to be here. I wanted to go back home so bad. And I remember I was really homesick. I called my parents and I was kind of crying, and I do not cry much. And I was like, I just want to go home. And my dad was like, well, just stick it out and, do a year of it. And if you don't like it, you can go home. And I was planning on being like the University of Kentucky, the basketball team, where it's like one and done, they're kind of out. And that was what my thoughts were. And thankfully, the Lord brought some really good spiritual influences into my life. And that really kind of set the course for where, I guess God has the last laugh because I've been down in Pensacola 15 years now. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Tell us about your wife.
I met her. I think I may have told you guys some of the stories. I met her. She played piano for chapel, and usually the students would sit kind of off to the side, and I always would kind of sit with them and talk to them. And I knew of her from mutual friends, and I just told that I was just kind of myself, and I had told her because I know one of the questions you guys had sent was like, what was your favorite car, kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I don't know why, I've always wanted to have a hearse as like a daily driver. I don't know, it's kind of
daily driver,
grocery store
and back.
Because I got to thinking about it. It's kind of it's a very random, because everyone's going to be in one at some point, and I was like, I might as well be alive to enjoy it.
Can we take a pause real quick? I have in front of me a list of Cooper Statt quotes from an Instagram page. And Cooper Statt,
you're such a big deal at PCC.
They have Instagram pages.
Do not understand.
Dedicated. And while we're on this, I'll let you get back to that in a second. Cooper Statt quote: "Everyone rides in a hearse. I just want to be alive when it happens." Here we go. Continue.
Yeah. So how does a hearse have to do with Jenna?
So I'd talk to people about that was something I want to do, and so before chapel, I'd just I'd say random things like that. I would love to have a hearse as a daily driver and all those kind of things. And very, very long story short, apparently she was interested in me, and I just thought she thought I was an idiot. And so one of her friends came up and was like, hey, you should ask her out sometime. And I laughed in his face because I was like, she thinks I'm really, really kind of stupid and goofy. And he's like, no, just ask her out sometime. And it took me 2 weeks to build up the courage to ask her. And I wasn't afraid she was going to say no. I actually thought she would. And so I didn't have a backup plan. And so I don't drink coffee at all, and so I was like, why don't we go? I knew she liked it, so I was like, why don't we go to Fosco's? And she's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I was so sure.
You what? W Riz?
Yeah,
No,
you
no,
raised
no,
her
no, no.
up. Yeah.
I was so no, no, no. So I was so sure she was gonna say no. I didn't have a backup plan. So I was like, I did the whole stereotypical Christian thing where I was like, let me pray about it and get back to you on it. That's all I had to say. And I was like, and so a week went by, and we went to Fosco's, and it was awkward. It was like it was kind of that whole interview thing, and we were the only place that was open was right outside the women's restroom, and like you're right outside the door, and like I didn't really know her super well, and the entire time you just kind of hear the like the toilet flushing or like the paper towel thing kind of shunking.
Not very
Yeah,
romantic.
no, and it was like it was so bad. We went for a drive afterwards. I just dropped her off, and I was like, well, that's kind of it. I didn't even ask for her number or anything. And a couple of days go by, and she messaged me on Facebook, and she's like, I had a really great time. We should hang out again sometime. And I was like, in what universe? Because I just kind of was like, well, that was that. And really, condensed story short, I found out that she liked Taco Bell. And so the next time we hung out, we went off to Milton, where the boardwalk is, and we just ate and kind of had Taco Bell and hung out. And I was so nervous. I didn't know what to say. And I was like, if conversation runs out, I just got like a 20-ounce thing of Mountain Dew. And I was like, well, if conversation just stalls, I'll just drink that and it'll be fine. And I was so
Good
nervous.
plan. Yeah, good plan.
I did not think this through. I was so nervous. I pretty much downed the whole thing in like 10 minutes. And we went to, just to kind of condense it, I took her to the Garcon Point Bridge.
Okay.
And me and my friends used to go out there if we wanted to like go, run or talk about spiritual things or just kind of be alone. That was where we would go. And so I don't know what possessed me to do it, but we went out there and we're walking on the bridge and just to kind of condense it, all of a sudden the Mountain Dew just kind of dropped, and I was like, well, I was like, I've got to, we're on the bridge and she's talking away, and I was like, I got to find a bathroom, and I'm just calculating in my head the nearest bathroom, and I was like, it's gonna be 20-25 minutes away. And it was dark at this point, and I'm sweating. It was so bad. And we're walking to where the bridge meets up with the land, and I thought I was so smooth. I was like, here, can you hold the flashlight really quick? And I just vault over the guardrail and disappear into the bushes. And and because I just knew it was gonna be like it was gonna be a 15-minute walk back to the car and 20 minutes to the nearest gas station. And then I still don't know what I was thinking. Looking back on it, it's just so embarrassing. But I come back up from the bushes, and I found out way later she knew what I was doing, which made it even. I was so embarrassed. But anyways, I was like, maybe we should talk about where things stand between us. And like, I don't know what I was thinking, but we basically kind of agreed to be friends and see where it went over the summer. And I found out way later she went back after that, and she told one of her best friends, she's like, I'm gonna marry that guy.
Wow.
And I was like, I did not
Look
get
at
that
him.
message from the Lord. Like that was not. And so I asked her later, I was like, why did you ever agree to come back? Because the first two dates were such dumpster fires. And she said, I just wanted to see what would happen next. And I was like, I did not. I was so
Oh,
down at
that's
that
amazing.
point. So,
Yeah.
but
no,
one
that's
thing led to
that's
another.
That's a cool story.
One of the reasons people like Mr. Stat in class is because stories like that, and he will tell these like hilarious stories and just take time out of class to have fun and tell stories, and they're good.
And that's why he has meme pages.
Yes.
You share some additional ones with us,
Boy,
Andrew?
will I.
Yeah.
So first, let me please explain to you that he has Cooper Stat Fan Club Instagram account. And these Instagram accounts, this one has like 300 something followers.
The fact you printed this off is
And there
so
are
concerning
a
to me.
bunch of memes of Cooper Stat. So feel free to check that out on Instagram. It is Cooper_Stat_fan_club. So check that out on Instagram. Lots of fun material there. You can check that out. But if you don't mind, Mr. Stat, I would like to read some of these Cooper Stat quotes from another Instagram page called Cooper.stat_quotes. This one has 600 followers. And so back to the point of everybody likes Cooper Stat, 600 people find it necessary to follow an account on Instagram called Cooper Stat Quotes because of how much you are beloved. Let me read some of these, and I'd just like your thoughts on these quotes. The first one here is, my parents probably should have put me up for adoption, Cooper Stat.
Well, thoughts on that quote?
Yeah.
Okay. This is way out of context. Well, okay. When I was a kid, I was very I don't know, I went through a pretty bad rebellious phase as a teenager, and like I looking back on it now that I'm my parents' age, I must have humiliated my parents a lot. There's one time I do remember I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I come home crying one day, and my mom was like, "What's wrong?" Like, I was at a public school in kindergarten, And I was like, so-and-so is really mean. He told me that George Washington is dead. And, Mom had to kind of break it to me that he had been, in the grave for a couple hundred years at that point. And apparently for me, it was like I just heard it for the first time. And there was another time where we're crossing the street, and you know how you have the guy walking across the street, and then you have the flashing hand. And I thought that meant that traffic was going to just go. And so I don't know why I did this, but I just stopped in the middle of the intersection, threw myself down on the ground, and I'm just screaming, like expecting to get run over. And my dad's on the other side, and he turns around, and I'm just in the middle of this intersection, just on the ground screaming. And he's like, "Get up right now! You're gonna get hit!" And I look back on it, and I'm like, my parents had so much patience with me.
Great story. I really like that. Next Cooper Statt quote. I want a guinea pig farm, but my wife hates guinea pigs. I would sell the guinea pig milk. Cooper Statt.
Oh my word! I knew this was.
Talk to us about guinea pigs, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, so
because if you're in his class, you understand the guinea pig obsession. But please explain to the listeners at home.
I don't know why. Ever since we had a couple of guinea pigs as pets when I was younger, and just looking at them, I feel like and I know this isn't what happened, but like when God got done with creation, he took all the spare parts and he just made a guinea pig, because like they don't make any sense. Like they're kind of a furry potato. Their back toes are different than their front toes. Like they have no defense mechanism, and somehow they've survived. The dinosaurs, which had way more defense mechanisms. But anyways,
those are interesting observations.
Yeah.
Yes,
I've never
exactly. He actually makes the case.
I don't know, but we had a couple of guinea pigs, and I always thought and I just made this up one time as a joke at a dinner, and it just has kind of stuck, that someday whenever I get my dream job, I'd go out to like Montana or something, and I'd just raise guinea pigs, and I'd shear them in the summer and sell make like coats out of guinea pigs fur or something like that. And I don't know. That was kind of where the idea came from.
How many guinea pigs per coat you think is required?
I don't know. It'd take a lot.
Yeah.
And then I did this as a
couple hundred, dude.
Yeah. I did this as a joke, and it kind of took on a life of its own. But I was, how like people will pay all this money for like, I'm trying to remember, like they'll have like donkey milk or like buffalo milk or all this stuff that is supposed to make your skin younger and all this. And I was like, what if I corner the guinea pig milk market? I'm like, nobody's tapped into this yet, and I could sell it for like $20 a gallon. Like I'd only get like a couple of drops per each guinea pig, but eventually if I had enough. So that's kind of where that came from.
Okay.
It was incredibly stupid, and it took on a life.
Let's stay with the guinea pig theme. Here's another guinea pig quote. They're filled with guinea pig quotes in here, by the way. So next one is, guinea pigs are like popcorn. You can't just eat one. Cooper Statt.
I don't know where some of these quotes come from.
You're saying you may not have said that?
No, I know I said them, but
Okay.
I don't know what I was thinking when I said them. No, I don't remember, like, because people in South America, it's considered a delicacy, and so people will actually eat them, and so I don't remember, somebody said that to me, and I was like, well, I guess guinea pigs are like popcorn, you can't have just one. And I guess that's kind of where it came from. I didn't realize, and this is kind of random, but there's a painting, and I don't think I showed it to your guys' class. There's a painting of the Last Supper, the famous Da Vinci painting, that when the Spanish came to Peru, they wanted to kind of be like the natives, to kind of connect them with things they know. So it has a painting of the Last Supper, and Jesus and all the apostles are there, and in the middle of the table is this guinea pig that they're eating, and it's like, it never would have happened. It never would have happened historically, but they wanted to make it so that the locals would be like, oh yeah, Jesus was one of us, I guess. I don't know. It was very interesting.
It's somewhere in the Bible, I think, the guinea pig part. It's just somewhere in there.
I don't know. But
Now, Andrew has interesting, I guess I should say he's interested in Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
And as a history professor,
Yeah, dude.
what are your thoughts on Bigfoot?
I went through and did a little bit of looking into this, because I know you've been very interested in it for
We've
quite
talked
a while.
about it a little bit
Yeah.
before classes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
Have you ever seen Bigfoot?
no.
I want to know if you've ever
You have a
had any
sticker
Bigfoot
on your
sightings.
Bill's mug, right, or something?
I might have.
So
I
you've
have
seen the
socks.
Oh, you have the socks.
That's what it was. I
Yes,
think
and
I
I
have
have socks too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm kind of curious what you guys think of it, because when I was a kid, we lived in the middle of nowhere, so you'd always see stuff in the forest and everything. And when you're young, your imagination's hyperactive, so you think any shadow, it could be Bigfoot. Excuse me, but I wanted to. What do you guys think about it? I did a little bit of looking into it, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts, because I know this is a passion project of Andrew's.
Long awaited Bigfoot on the podcast. I think so. First off, shout out to Pastor Monty. If Pastor Monty's a listener of the podcast, shout out to Pastor Monty, because he somewhat has put us on to Bigfoot and different things like this. because he studied out himself and had fun with that. But I think it is just that, like having fun studying this stuff. But I do, when people have asked me, do you think Bigfoot is real? I say yes, just to be a little bit controversial and stir some things up. But I don't think it's real in the sense of there's this weird big creature that we haven't found yet, you know? But I do think it could be possible. It could be possible. I'm leaving the door open. That Bigfoot is a demonic creature. That the reason we haven't found it is because it has the other, the demonic powers where it can choose to be seen, it choose to not be seen, but there's so much evidence that has been piled up over the years of people, getting this weird video or weird picture of this creature. There's so much evidence that it's like, it's hard to throw all that in the garbage, so much over the years. It keeps coming back, and every couple of years we see this new video or this new picture. So I think there's just too much evidence to throw it all in the garbage and say, no, it's not real.
And then,
so I think
of course, you've got Genesis 6.
We have Genesis 6, and we could go dissect that if we have an hour and a half. But I think there's too much evidence to throw it all in the garbage can. So it's a fun thing to think about, and I leave the door open. My foot is still in the door about it being a demonic thing and about how this could really be real, but since it has a demonic element to it, it doesn't let us see it in its full form. So those are my Bigfoot thoughts.
Okay, good.
What do you think?
I think what Andrew thinks. That's where I'm at. I haven't been searching for Bigfoot personally.
Out in the woods, hunting them down.
Mike Smith is one of our favorite teachers over at PCA. And
shout out Mr. Smith.
Shout out to Mr. Smith. Monty has persuaded Mike Smith to be searching for Bigfoot as well. So anyhow, what about this question? They say that men are constantly thinking about the Roman Empire, and you as a historian,
Ooh, great question.
when was the last time you were thinking about the Roman Empire?
I didn't think about it till last night when the question list came through. So I did.
There you go.
I did a little thinking about it. It is. There are certain, I guess, aspects or features of the Roman Empire that you think about from time to time, whether it's like certain emperors or just different parts of it, I guess. But I know that question kind of went, kind of viral a while ago, and it is. I guess that is something that guys do think about a lot. I never really thought of it that way, but it does seem to be a thing for sure.
As a professor for the last 6.5 years, I think you said, what is something you really love about teaching?
I think the thing that really opened my eyes, my grandfather taught for 33 years in a public school, and then my dad taught for 29. I never really planned to kind of go the route that they did, and teach, especially like college level. But the one thing that I remember that kind of really vividly was I had to do like an internship, kind of like a practicum thing. And I remember I sat down and, because when you're a kid interacting with your grandparents, you kind of interact on a different level. But when I was a college student, I got to interact with them a little more kind of adult to adult. And I remember he kind of sat down with me one day, and he had, and I was going to bring it in and I forgot to. He had 3x5 cards he would have students fill out, and kind of similar to what I would do in classes. But then there was one that he would do where he would say, leave it anonymous, but what is the biggest issue that you're facing right now? And it was amazing how real they were in their answers, where it was like, my parents are going through a divorce, or that I feel insecure about my weight, or whatever it was, and I'm being bullied or I'm being picked on. And it really opened my eyes to realize that you're dealing with that with students, that there's so much more going on than you can see just in the class. And that was something that really kind of inspired me, that I wanted to be kind of like my grandfather. And that was the thing I think is most rewarding, because even at a Christian college, and you probably know this, and I would say you probably know too, people are dealing with so much stuff going on, whether, there are parents who are divorcing, or family issues, or things going on back home. And that was something that was really, really interesting to see, because sometimes you can kind of tend to be like, things are going really bad for you or your life. And then you realize it's like people are going through so much more stuff. And that was something that really, that's been I think my favorite part of teaching, is just getting to connect with students on a level outside of class.
And I think that is part of the reason why people enjoy your class so much, is because, as well as all the fun Taco Bell stories, and you and
Guinea
Jenna, guinea pigs, and
As long as
Jenna.
you don't merge Taco Bell and guinea
Eat
pigs
at the same
right?
time. Yeah, a
Is
guinea
that the
pig burrito.
ingredients?
A guinea
That'd
pig
be a problem,
burrito.
but
This could get scary.
Yeah.
But I really do think that part of the reason that you were talking about is like, you genuinely do care about your students, and you want to see them succeed, and you want to help them, not just academically, but like spiritually and those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing that I think and you probably remember this, like when you look back to like your classes you took, you don't remember a whole lot, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
it kind of, you're almost sowing to the wind, it feels like, sometimes. But the thing that I think somebody really, they showed me before I ever started teaching, that no, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is very accurate. And then they had said, get people to talk about themselves. That's the one subject everybody's an expert in, is themselves.
Mhm.
And so that was something that really, really stood out to me and inspired me, because it's like sometimes I don't always know what to say or what, how to talk to people. But if you get them to talk about themselves, a lot of times that opens up avenues
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and kind of things like that.
Yeah, I think one reason why you are so beloved is because you do have a genuine burden for others, but then also because God has gifted you as a teacher, and people see that. They see the burden you have for them, but then it's like a gift. It's Ephesians 4, of course, 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans 12 talk about spiritual gifts and the teaching gift, but then God gives pastors and teachers and prophets and evangelists and apostles. So,
And if people get anything good out of it, it's all the Lord. It's not,
amen.
it's
Yeah,
not
he
me at
gives you
all.
that. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with
And we're
me.
blessed as a church to have a lot of good, gifted teachers here at NorthStone. It's a wonderful thing. So why history as a teacher? As a
I don't know.
profession?
I never really thought I was going to go that route. I remember my first year or two in, I called my dad and actually thought about changing majors. I was going to go to political science. I originally was going to come here for nursing. That was actually my plan, was I was going to be a nurse.
A guinea pig nurse.
Yeah, guinea pig hospital.
Yeah.
One of my closest friends, and kind of like a really big spiritual influence in my life growing up, he was a nurse, and so he kind of showed me a little bit of the ins and outs of it. And I thought really long and hard about coming down as a nurse. And I don't mind the blood and guts side of things. Like I know, you're dealing with people at their worst when you're in the hospital. But for me, I was like, I don't know if I could do that 24/7. And so that was kind of something that set me on the history side of things. I thought about switching and then I didn't, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. But I've just always been interested in history ever since I was a little kid. And I was super nerdy, unfortunately, as a kid. I was that 5-year-old who, when my grandparents would show up, I would try to impress them by rattling off all the presidents in order. Like I don't know why.
That's a boss move.
It was
Yeah.
You're 5 years old.
it was
I'm
such a
44. I can't do that. Cooper,
I don't know why. It
That's
was
good.
looking back on it, you're like, I'm sure my grandparents just wanted to talk and hang out with my folks, and I'm like, let me tell you all the presidents in order. It was, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So there's a lot of things going on politically or just in the world. And I wondered, like, you from a special perspective of history, studying history and knowing a lot about it, how does studying history and have a knowledge of what has happened in the past help you interpret some of the things that we see happening today?
Yeah. I was gonna say, because I think when you look at the story of humankind and mankind, it's for sure, we're sinners, and that's one thing that you notice when you look through is, without God, it is amazing to see how far and how low man can go. But I think what's really interesting is also, you see, like, for example, I know you have things like the Russian-Ukrainian war, you have the Israel-Hamas conflict, and how that's tied in so many generations and centuries back. But the one thing I think is kind of cool too is, like, we often, when you look at uh, the past, you often see people in like black and white or these stodgy photographs and stuff. And I think sometimes you forget they were real people too. They had hopes and dreams and things they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I was thinking, like, stuff that, like, is so, sometimes it's the little random things that you kind of stick out in your mind. I don't think I told you guys this, but I remember, like, sometimes when you're like looking or researching for a class, you'll stumble across something that just kind of makes you go, whoa. And there was one that I actually double checked it today to make sure, but something that's really random that you would never put two and two together is Al Capone is the reason that we have expiration dates on our milk cans.
Really?
Yeah, which I thought was kind of interesting, because it's like, so when the prohibition movement was going on, and of course he was, running all the alcohol and stuff, and it was getting a little bit too hot for him, he decided he wanted to go to a more respectable position. And so he decided he was going to take over the milk business, I guess. I don't know why. But he made an offer, and the guys were like, nah, we're not interested. So he came back with a couple of his goons, kidnapped the president, and was like, I'll ransom him for 50,000. And they're like, okay, we see, so they paid the ransom, and that's how he bought it. But one of his relatives got sick because she drank a thing of milk that had gone bad. And I guess she didn't die from it, but she got really, really sick. And so he was so concerned about that he, from that point on, decided he was going to stamp the use by on milk cartons. And I was like, that is so, there's little things like that, because like every once in a while when I pick up a milk carton from the store, I think about that. And it's something that you would not put,
Interesting.
two and two together, but it's sometimes you just random things that we
Yeah.
still use today
That's
that
really
comes from
cool,
the
yeah.
past.
I'm sure there are a bunch of those little things that, you have in your head that you go throughout your normal day and you're like, oh, I know why this is happening. I know why this is here from history. That's cool.
It's kind of, and then and the one thing I was going to ask you guys about is like when you're looking like through the Bible and different historical characters and stuff, sometimes those things really kind of stick out. And I was gonna ask you guys about this. I was doing some research on it because I know when Jesus in Matthew 24, he talks about that the temple's gonna be torn down. There's not gonna be one stone left on another. And I was gonna ask you about this because I looked it up, but I wanted to hear like what you guys have to say about it. So when they're besieging Jerusalem in AD 70, Titus, the general, who's the son of the emperor at the time, he gives strict instructions that the temple's not to be destroyed or to be touched, because it's the holy site of the Jews, and he doesn't want to rile them any further. And so I guess what ended up happening was one soldier, he took a torch and just kind of whipped it into the temple, and it caught the curtains, which would have been covered in kind of like oil and all of that stuff, and the place just kind of went up like a furnace. And Titus is trying to put the fire out because he doesn't want the temple to get destroyed. And they said that I guess what Herod did when he built the second temple is he put gold and silver in between each of the building blocks, because it was kind of an earthquake-prone region, and the gold and the silver will bend, but it won't break, and so that way you won't have like a collapse. Well, I guess the fire got so hot, it melted the gold and the silver, and the Romans, because they wanted to get their hands on it, they literally ripped the entire temple stone from stone. And I was kind of curious, is there any like...
Yeah, I was in Israel a few years
Okay,
ago.
I knew you got
Yeah,
to go, yeah.
and you can actually still see there's still a semblance of that second temple
Okay.
that Herod built.
Wow.
And so much of what was done back then is ornate.
Mhm.
You can still see the beauty and the the thoughtfulness of it, and it's just incredible. Like this afternoon or this morning, I met with a couple of the men in our church and some architects. And as our church has grown, we want
Yeah.
to do our own building
Yeah.
project. And just the respect I have for architects, but they didn't have all the abilities back then, and yet they still did some amazing stuff.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as a historian, history, characters in history. If you could go back and have one meal with one person in history,
What a question.
like
Yeah.
who would you want to eat with?
Okay, besides Jesus, I think we take him off the board, you know.
He's the obvious
It's,
answer.
it's true.
Yeah, right.
Because the Last Supper would be very interesting to sit in for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I thought long and hard about this one. Who would you guys pick if you were to like just?
Oh,
kinda
man.
I know I'm turning it back around on you. My short answer would probably be either somebody like Alexander the Great or like maybe one of the founding fathers. It'd be really cool.
Okay.
It'd be really
Yeah.
cool to sit down and. But I got to thinking about it. Like most characters throughout history, if you were going to go back in time, you'd probably be sitting like 4 or 5 tables down. You'd be at like some giant kingly banquet, and you never would actually get a chance to talk to him. And if you did, you'd probably wouldn't be talking to him for super long. So I got to think probably the founding fathers would be,
Okay.
somebody like Ben Franklin or George Washington. It'd be really cool to.
Yeah.
But what about you guys?
Andrew, who would you say?
Man, I don't know. I like you mentioned like Al Capone earlier. Like I'd like to chat it up with Al Capone.
Yeah, right,
see
yeah.
what he's like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I wouldn't pick that. That wouldn't be my final answer.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be intriguing.
You tell Al Capone, avoid a guy named Elliot,
Yeah.
and make sure you pay your taxes.
Yeah. Like
or
people
tell
like
him to
that.
quit all his nonsense.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know what
true,
you tell
yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, I really would like. I know this isn't historical, but I would really like just to talk to Donald Trump for a while and just see what see where that conversation goes. He seems like such an interesting person to talk to. But I would probably pick somebody in the Bible. I'd like to talk to David.
Yeah.
Sit down with David. He seems like he'd be a fun guy to talk to.
Yeah, and of course, like, he's a man after God's own heart, and I think that's kind of interesting, is like, despite all of his flaws and all the things he did, I think that's a pretty high praise that,
Yeah.
He's a man after God's own heart.
I love Psalm 51,
Mhm.
and his confession after that stuff with Bathsheba and
Yeah.
sending Uriah to the front lines of the battle. I think we all relate to Psalm 51
Mhm.
times in our lives when we've been wayward and asking God for mercy.
Mm-hmm.
Who would
Yeah.
you pick, Pastor Johnson?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was sitting here trying to figure that out.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of good options. on the board.
other than like biblical characters, I would pick a comedian. Somebody that's really funny.
Mhm.
And I was trying to think which comedian over the years I would like, because I like to laugh.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Mary Hart doeth good like a medicine.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you just need to get around people that'll just make you giggle while you eat lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's who I'd go for. Somebody like that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
I respect
You guys
it.
know who Fred Klutz is? Now he's not anybody in history. He's still living, but he's a clean, capable comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Fred Klutz. You can find him on Dry Bar Comedy.
Oh, okay.
But he's terrific. Britt and I will go on cruises once in a while. We like to cruise, and he was our favorite comedian, Fred Klutz. So
Okay.
those are my thoughts there. Our next question for you, Professor Statt, is talk to us about valley times in your life, and what did the Lord do to strengthen you during valley times, and then maybe also mention some mountaintop times where you felt like the Lord kept you humble when you've been on the mountain.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, and you guys have probably experienced, I would imagine, experienced this as well. The thing that's crazy is like sometimes it's almost like you're on a mountain one day and then you're in a valley the next. And the one thing that I think is interesting is that usually those kind of seem to go, right on top of each other. Like, one day you're having you're feeling like you're on top of the world, and the next day you're not.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's kind of helped me is like when you're in the valley, I think sometimes it's almost more real than it is when you're on the mountaintop. And I know I've talked to you a little bit about this, but when I worked at Five Stones Camp, that was something that like that whole summer, it was the best summer of my life. It was the worst summer of my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but at the same time, I mean, I was a country kid, and you're dealing with inner city, kids, and they're 15, 16 years old, and they're double my size, they're my height, and it was a very big learning experience. But like you were saying with the Psalms, that kind of came alive, like just reading through the Psalms, it felt like you were watching it in 4K kind of thing. So that was something that was really, really kind of was really good. And then I know you guys have mentioned this a little bit, but when I lost my brother about a year or so ago, the one thing that really seemed, and I was going to ask you guys about this, the one thing that really kind of helped me was looking through times in the Bible when God appeared to people. And the one that I've always been kind of focused on a lot and has really helped me was not only the book of Job, but also Jacob. He's dealing with one of the worst, his brother's coming to meet him. He doesn't know if he's friendly or he's going to try to kill him. And it's kind of that moment where Jacob like realizes all of his planning, he can't control this. He can't plan it. He can't manipulate it. He can't control the outcome. And when he's praying, the thing that kind of was interesting to me is like, is that God just kind of wrestles him. There's no real it seems like there's no introduction or anything. He just kind of gets jumped by God. And finally, after a couple of hours of that, Jacob realizes, I think, that he's fighting the Lord, and he won't let him go till he blesses him. And I thought that was really kind of interesting, is that God never really explained why he did it or why he was there. But I was going to ask you guys, do you think that that God the Father has ever appeared on earth, or would that been like a kind of a theophany, like the Jesus?
Yeah, I don't think God the Father's ever appeared. I do think it would be Jesus, but I really haven't studied that out. What are your thoughts, Pastor?
Oh, yes. There are theophanies in Scripture. Cooper, I wanted to mention to you, of course, the loss of your brother. You're talking about valley times, like you're talking about God appearing, and like Psalm 23 talks about, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That doesn't just refer to when I die, but when I'm grieving over somebody that I love that died,
sure.
It can apply there. And then it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil because thou art with me. And God is with us in those valley times, and in ways. And sometimes we pray that Psalm 13. How long will you hide your face from me? Like, we don't sense his presence when we're in a deep valley.
Yeah.
But the fact is, even when we're grieving over the loss of those that we love, for the sake of his children, I am with thee, he says. And it's a promise in Scripture. So, yeah.
I'm going through Job right now, and you brought that up. Just talking about, passing our trials. And, I'm not really going through anything right now. I just think it's, helpful, useful studying that book. But do you have any passages that you really hold to? Do you have any life verses that you
I was gonna say,
mean
like,
something to you?
the life verse that I've really is Deuteronomy 4:29, and it's I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing. Let me see. I can actually let me look it up so I make sure I get it right. But it's I think it's along the lines of, let me pull it up really quickly here. let's see, Deuteronomy. Yeah, because I know, like, for you, Titus 2:11 through 15 are yours. Now,
Yes,
what
absolutely.
brought you to that? I'm actually kind of curious. Like, what made you pick those as your life verses, or was there an event, or was it just kind of over time, or?
As a teenager, I was just trying to figure out how to live life, an inner city kid, and I just wanted clear direction. And I
Hmm.
feel like those verses gave me clear direction. It plainly says in Titus 2:12 that we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world.
Hmm.
And so, with the broken home situation and the lack of strong male leadership, loving strong male leadership in my life, I was like, I need my heavenly Father,
Yeah.
in the sense of like male leadership to tell me this is the way to live,
Hmm.
misfit kid, live soberly, serious minded and righteously. So abhor that which is evil
Yeah.
and cleave to that which is good, and live godly in Christ Jesus. So that's
Hmm.
basically, I started out with Titus 2:12 by itself as my life verse.
Oh, okay.
And then at some point I was like reading a verse 11. I'm like, wait, I like that. And 13,
Just
looking for
kind of.
that blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. And then 14, so gospel heavy. And then verse 15,
Hmm.
these things exhort and speak and,
Yeah.
being, so it all just kind of came together for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Deuteronomy 4, you said.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 4:29, and it's but if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy God, thou shalt find him if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul, which I thought was really interesting. That God, if you pursue him, he will be there.
Yeah.
He's not going to just be some remote God that you have to try to do all this works-based salvation or whatever it is. It's like
Yeah,
if you
right.
seek him, you will find him.
My life verse is really similar. It's 1 Samuel 12:24, and Samuel's about to fade off the scene, and he says to Israel, only fear the Lord and serve him in truth with all your heart, for
Mhm.
consider how great things he's done for you.
Hmm.
So it's a similar idea of
Mhm.
focus on the Lord and serve him with all you got.
Hmm.
Those are great verses. What's the last book you read? You're a reader.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I knew you guys were gonna ask me. I've been working through a couple of books. I finished one on William Kidd, the guy Captain Kidd who like buried a bunch of treasure. I don't know. I just saw it and I thought it was like $2 at a thrift store. So I read through that. It was okay. The hard part and with history books is you have to chew the meat and spit out the bones. There's sometimes
Sure.
there's some good books and other times there's books where you're
Yeah.
like it's just But and then I'm working on one right now about the presidents, how they all like the from the 1950s up till present day, how they all got together after they were out of office. Because, when you're an ex-president, there's kind of that club, there's 4 or 5 that are alive right now,
Mhm.
and how they interact with each other. And that was kind of an interesting read as well.
I think you told the story in class one time of your flight got delayed or something. You're in airport and you read like like a couple hundred pages sitting in an airport for 3 hours.
Oh no, I'm trying to remember. No, that was at the DMV.
Oh, the DMV.
I have
Okay.
finally figured out. I don't know if you guys have done this. The DMV. You can schedule your appointment and you can show up on time and everything, and you'll still be there for like 5 hours.
Right.
And so I think I figured out like the pro hack where it's like you bring in a book that is like so thick,
Yeah.
and that you just settle down for the long haul, and it seems like it goes by faster. I don't know if it does
Yeah.
or not,
You
but.
probably could bring a tent or something too. That'd
You
be
might as
fun.
well, because sometimes when you go to the DMV, it feels like I don't know what they're doing, but they're just sitting
Yeah.
there and they're taking their time, and it's like
Yeah.
you'll get the number, and I don't know if you've had this happen. It'll be up on the screen, and you're like you're number 47, and they'll be like it'll feel like 3 hours goes by, and they're like number 31, and you're like,
Yeah, right.
it's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna be here
Oh,
for the
boy,
rest
yeah.
of the day. But
Right.
I think that's
So
what
you're a recreational reader, would you say? Like
I
you
do
enjoy
it,
to pass the
yeah.
time with reading. Yeah. I read every day,
Mhm.
but reading is a discipline for me. So I have to make myself do it.
It is hard, yeah.
Yeah, Monty told me when I was a teenager aspiring to be in ministry, he's my mentor and foster
Mhm.
father, of course. He said, James, you have to be a reader because you've got to be feeding the people you pastor,
Mhm.
and it's typically the same people in general gathering for each time you preach. So you got to be
Yeah.
growing your mind.
Yeah.
And I said, but Monty, I don't like to read, And if you want to feed people, you have to be growing your own mind. You have to be being fed yourself,
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
taught and growing. So it's a discipline for me. My sister's like you. She's a recreational
Oh,
reader,
okay.
my sister Cassandra. And she could just whittle a whole afternoon away with a good book.
I wish.
I will say, I don't know, because when I was growing up and it was, I don't know how it was. Did you play a lot of basketball? Is that kind of like when you were a teenager, or did you just kind of like,
Not till I was probably 20 years
Okay.
old. I picked up basketball. When I started working at the youth center, you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
Five Stones,
yeah.
which is a ministry of good news.
yeah.
But yeah, I didn't start playing basketball until I became an adult.
Okay, I gotcha. Because like when we were growing up, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have
Yeah.
computers or internet, so like reading was kind of a big thing. But I will say, with all of the distractions now of social media and YouTube and everything else, it can be very hard sometimes because I don't know if it's intentional or not, but sometimes it feels like if you don't look at your phone after a certain amount of time, you almost kind of start to get jittery, where it's like, did somebody message me? Did I get a notification?
Those withdrawals or whatever.
Yeah, and so that's been something that I've had to work on a little bit.
Mr. Statt, if you could travel back in history to any time period, where do you think you'd go?
I thought about that. I don't know. It would be interesting to be around the time of Christ. I would love to see how he interacted with and how it would have worked.
I mentioned Israel. Have you been to Israel?
I'm not. I was going to ask you, like, was there a place that you went to that, like, it felt like the scripture really came alive? Was there a certain spot that you went to, or like a place where it felt like it just really kind of hit?
So much of it was amazing for me, for sure. Like being there where they believe he preached the Sermon on the Mount is pretty remarkable. John chapter 5 came alive to me because I've been to the pool of Bethesda, and I was actually there on the Sabbath day, which is of course an issue in John chapter 5. So I recommend to anybody, and I'm definitely recommending if you have opportunity to ever get to go to Israel. Of course, with the war going on between Hamas and Israel, that stuff is, I think they've opened again tours. You just have to stay away from the Gaza Strip. But
we could take a class field trip or something over to Israel.
I was going to ask, did you get to go to Megiddo? I know the overlooking the Valley of Armageddon.
We did. Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
It's remarkable. And I went with Pastor Monty.
Did you?
And he's a legit Bible scholar. So he's like laying out how he sees the Battle of Armageddon unfolding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and the reason, by the way, he's such a Bigfoot fan is because for those that don't know Monty, he's a big human being.
He is very
so he's
tall.
like pointing out this and that with his big old arms, his wingspan.
Yeah, he is very
Yeah.
Because it's interesting. I've always wanted to go visit there because from what we can tell, the first recorded battle in history took place at Megiddo, and then the last battle is going to take place. So it's almost like it kind of comes around.
See,
full
that's
circle.
cool. That's interesting.
Yeah,
those things.
But like standing there knowing that the last battle, it has to be a very kind of surreal.
Yeah. You mentioned sports earlier. What is your favorite sport to play?
I was never really good at sports. My dad, he loved playing basketball. He was really good at it. I never got that gene, so I liked playing baseball, but I was also never really good at it.
What position?
I just kind of played more recreationally. I never really played seriously. I thought, that I was going to be the next MLB star. And of course,
as a young man,
as a kid, you're like practicing hitting flies in the yard, and you think it's going to, some scout's going to drive by in the middle of nowhere. And
I literally had all those same thoughts.
100%. Shooting baskets playing basketball in the driveway. There is Kentucky's coach driving by.
Yeah, you're just waiting for the car to screech to a stop. And like, sign here.
Full ride.
Here
you go.
Yeah. It is funny because once you get older, you kind of grow out of that.
Right. Yeah.
Or who do you think? NBA is going on, and we talk about NBA all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Who you got this year? Playoffs. I know we're the Pacers and Celtics East Finals, and then we got the Mavericks and Timberwolves left. Who you got winning it all?
I don't know. I want to see the Timberwolves because they've been kind of the bottom dwellers of the NBA for so long.
Oh right,
It'd be really kind of cool to see them pull it off, but I honestly don't know. It'd be cool to also see the Pacers make it because once again, I know you guys are big Pacers fans, but it's been cool this year to see teams that don't usually do well make it in the playoffs.
Absolutely,
especially pretty deep.
I agree.
So, final question, I think, for the pod, Cooper, and then we'll let you go. Bucket list. So, like, before you die, is there something on your bucket list, or maybe several things on your bucket list you wanna get accomplished?
Guinea pig farm number 1.
That's probably on there.
Before the Lord returns.
Before the Lord returns. I'm trying to think. I would like to go to Israel. I think it would be really cool because everybody I've talked to that's gone from there or gone to there has said like it's like you can see like the different cities and towns in the Bible, how it kind of comes alive. And I think it would be cool at some point to have seen all 50 states, to be able to travel to all of them.
Yeah.
That'd be something that'd be really kind of cool.
I have an evangelist friend who has been to 48 of the 50. So, he just needs some church to call him up in each of those last 2 states. Yeah. And you said your favorite car, you want a hearse, right? Is that?
I would like to have one, and Jenna does. She thinks it's kind of like macabre, and I get it. It definitely doesn't have a good connotation, but I just thought it'd be because
date night in the hearse.
Well, okay, I'll explain my reasons real quick for it, and then I'll tell like the actual cars that we. But like, so I got to thinking about it with a hearse. They usually keep them pretty, they're pretty clean. They're not driven super heavily or anything like that. And then you could use it as like a pickup truck because I mean, of course, it fits like really caskets and stuff inside it. So, but you could also, I know, you could also use it as like a, you could put like a mattress in the back or something and kind of use it as like a camper. And like I got to thinking about it, you could park in like the sketchiest Walmart parking lot, leave the doors unlocked, and if somebody goes to steal it, all you got to do is just kind of sit up in the back and just kind of like groan a little bit, and it'll be out of there super fast. But
That's amazing.
in reality wise, I wouldn't mind getting like if I was gonna get a car, a Ford Bronco, like the Raptor edition.
Yeah.
Those are really nice.
Not the O.J. Simpson edition.
No.
Yeah,
The new ones are
yeah,
nice.
the more famous one.
Yeah.
And then this is a little bit of an older car.
Those are
but
really nice, yeah.
yeah, I really like the 1964, kind of the once again kind of macabre here, but the limousine that JFK was riding in when he got a set, like that style of limousine. I really like it. So
Now, you've used the word macabre a few times. I'm not familiar with that word.
I'm dark, I guess. Like yeah, that idea.
These are reasons why we love you, Cooper, because we learn.
Why we
from
have him
you.
on the podcast.
Well, what are your guys' car choices? I know you always ask. I know you asked the last podcast too. I'm kind of curious. What would you guys drive if you could? Dealer basically tells you any car in the lot's yours.
What do you say, Andrew?
I said Corvette. I want to say something else. You go ahead, and I'll say something else.
When I was a teenager, I thought McLaren F1s were the way to go.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those are nice cars.
Yeah, and they say they're the fastest thing on the Autobahn.
I believe it.
Where people are driving out there. So I mean, if I'm I still, even though I'm a middle-aged man, I still feel like I have that need for speed. So part of it, if it wasn't a car, it would be a motorcycle. If I wasn't getting a motorcycle, I really have an interest in flying.
Oh,
I'd like to get a plane.
Oh yeah.
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 one of these days.
Strength for Life sponsored plane.
Yeah,
I would probably go with I'm not a big Tesla fan, but the armored truck, the Cybertruck,
It's pretty awesome.
looked pretty cool.
We were downtown Pensacola
Yeah.
doing some solo.
Yeah.
Me and Scott Butler saw one in downtown Pensacola.
They look so alien almost. It's
Right.
very interesting seeing them.
That's why. I don't know. It'd just
Yeah.
be fun.
Yeah, good answers. Cooper, we've got some gifts for you. We do want to
Oh.
thank you for being on the podcast. And if you're watching this, I want you to know you can get some of this stuff at our Strength for Life store. Our website is strengthforlife.church. And so you can get a couple different styles of hat. I got you a trucker hat.
Thank you so much.
If
I
you want the
appreciate it.
other style, man, we'll hook you up.
That
So
is
this
more than
is
fine.
one of these. And then we got you a Strength for Life t-shirt. The material on this stuff is, Andrew, what do you think about this mix here?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, as opposed to like a full cotton thing which shrinks,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
true,
this has got that Pastor Monty, which we've mentioned him a few
Yeah.
times, and I've mentioned how large he is and how much of a fan of Bigfoot he is. He has like the biggest size that we have in the Strength for Life store, but he always wears it when he works out. So it's his favorite go-to shirt when he's working out. So we want you to have one of those. And then I got you a copy of Issues of the
thank you so
Heart.
much. That's
And
very
if you're
kind of
not
you.
familiar, if you're watching this, if you're not familiar with this, I know Cooper is already, but in this book, we deal with the issues of the heart, like self-control and lust and envy, things that really inhibit us in life, things like pride, relationship pain, much more issues of the heart. And it's Bible answers. It's not my answers necessarily, but it's the Lord's answers. And you can get any of these things at the Strength for Life store, strengthforlife.church. So Cooper, these things are for you.
Well, thank you so much. It was
Thank you
an
so
honor
much
to be here.
for being our guest. We really appreciate it. And I know I was strengthened through the
Same.
podcast.
As always, I always enjoy talking to you guys because I always leave spiritually strengthened
Amen.
and just and appreciate the fellowship and
Yeah.
all you do for us and for the church.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Indeed, God is our refuge and strength, and He is a very present help in trouble. Thank you again for tuning in to today's podcast. God bless you all.